The Xarxian Challenge. The massive viewscreen aboard Earth's orbital defense station Alpha flickered to life, displaying Supreme Warlord Nixus of the Xarxian Empire. Her obsidian skin gleamed like polished stone under the light of distant stars, ceremonial battle scars traced in silver across her arms. At 9 feet tall, she dominated the screen, golden eyes burning with centuries of conquest. People of Earth, her voice resonated through the station's command center, the Xarxian Empire has watched your species spread through our sector like insects. Your weak bodies and primitive technology pollute space that rightfully belongs to the strong. But we are not without honor. Admiral Reese Thompson stood before the screen, her weathered face illuminated by the harsh light. Around her, Earth's Joint Defense Council sat in tense silence. They had known this confrontation was coming since humans first encountered Xarxian scout ships 3 months ago. We offer you one chance to prove your worth, Nixus continued, raising a ceremonial war staff that crackled with energy. Send your strongest warriors to face ours in ritual combat on our sacred world of Cranox. Victory will earn you the right to exist as equals in our space. Failure means submission to Xarxian rule. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in heavy silence. General Marcus Wong was the first to speak. Their warriors average 9 feet tall, with enhanced strength and reflexes. Their bones are practically unbreakable. How are we supposed to compete with that? Admiral Thompson turned to Commander Raj Patel, head of Special Operations. You've studied their combat footage. What are our options? Patel's dark eyes gleamed as he pulled up holographic analysis of Xarxian fighting techniques. They rely entirely on brute force and ancestral combat forms. They've never needed to innovate because they've always been the strongest. But strength isn't everything. He gestured to a file marked, Project Artemis. I've been assembling a team for exactly this scenario. Not our biggest or strongest, our smartest. Specialists in unconventional warfare. The hologram shifted to show personnel files. Lieutenant Kira Yoshida, former Olympic gymnast turned zero-gravity combat expert. Captain Diego Ramirez, master of 5 different martial arts styles focused on using opponents' strength against them. Dr. Victoria Stone, expert in xenobiology who's developed entirely new fighting techniques based on alien pressure points. Admiral Thompson studied the files, then looked up at the council. They expect us to send giants to match their strength. Instead, we send those who've learned to overcome superior force through skill and strategy. She straightened her uniform. The Xarxians think size determines worth. Let's show them how wrong they are. On Cranox, Supreme Warlord Nixus reviewed the human acceptance message with amusement. Her war council gathered around her in the ancient stone chamber, their massive frames casting long shadows in the light of the ceremonial flames. They actually accepted, Battle Master Koros laughed, her silver-traced scars glinting. These humans are either very brave or very foolish. Perhaps both, Nixus mused, running a finger along her war staff. But they've survived this long for a reason. Prepare the sacred arena. In 1 month, we will see what these humans are truly made of. The next weeks saw frantic preparation on both sides. On Earth, the chosen team trained relentlessly, studying every scrap of footage of Xarxian combat. They developed new techniques specifically to counter the aliens' superior strength and size. Commander Patel watched Lieutenant Yoshida spar with a combat drone programmed to simulate Xarxian fighting styles. She moved like water, never meeting force with force, instead redirecting and avoiding until the perfect moment to strike. The drone, despite its superior strength, couldn't land a single hit. They expect us to fight like them, Yoshida said, helping Dr. Stone map new pressure points they discovered in Xarxian anatomy. Their entire culture is built around the idea that might makes right. They've never faced an opponent who simply refuses to play by those rules. Captain Ramirez nodded as he practiced a new combination of moves. Every culture's fighting style reveals their weaknesses. The Xarxians have relied on being the biggest and strongest for so long, they've forgotten there are other ways to win. As the human transport ship approached Cranox, its crew could see the massive arena that had been prepared. Built from ancient black stone and modern energy fields, it dominated the capital city's skyline. Thousands of Xarxian warriors had gathered to witness what they assumed would be a quick demonstration of their superiority. The transport landed on a massive platform, and for the first time, humans and Xarxians stood face to face. Supreme Warlord Nixis towered over Commander Patel as he led his team down the ramp, her golden eyes narrowing at their small size. "This is an insult," Battle Master Koros snarled. "You send children to face us?" Patel looked up at the massive warrior, his expression calm. "We send our best. Size isn't everything, Battle Master. Perhaps it's time someone taught you that lesson." The gathered Xarxians laughed, the sound echoing off the ancient stones. They had no way of knowing that their entire understanding of combat, and their place in the galaxy, was about to change forever. The dawn of battle. The ancient arena of Cranox hummed with anticipation as the first day of trials approached. In their designated preparation chamber, the human team conducted final equipment checks while Commander Patel reviewed their strategy. The room, designed for warriors twice their size, made them look even smaller, but none showed any sign of intimidation. Lieutenant Kira Yoshida calibrated her motion sensors while Dr. Victoria Stone made last-minute adjustments to their lightweight combat suits. The suits, barely visible under their standard uniforms, were designed to absorb and redistribute impact, a crucial innovation for facing opponents with superhuman strength. "They'll expect us to try matching their strength," Patel addressed the team, his voice steady. "That's exactly what we won't do. Remember your training. Use their expectations against them." Captain Diego Ramirez spoke up from where he was performing his pre-combat meditation. "Their combat style is deeply ritualistic. Every move has meaning in their culture. That makes them predictable. Predictable, but still incredibly dangerous," Dr. Stone reminded them, pulling up a holographic display of Xarxian physiology. "One direct hit could end any of us. We have to be perfect." The chamber door crashed open, and Battle Master Koros strode in, her massive frame nearly filling the doorway. "It's time, humans. Try not to die too quickly, it would shame us both." Her golden eyes swept over the team with barely concealed disdain. The arena itself was a marvel of engineering and ancient tradition. Energy fields shimmered above, containing the combat area while allowing spectators a clear view. The stands were packed with thousands of Xarxian warriors, their obsidian skin and silver-traced scars creating a stunning visual effect under the alien sun. Supreme Warlord Nixis stood from her ceremonial throne, raising her war staff. "Let the trials begin. First combat, Battle Initiate Zara vs." She paused, checking her display with obvious amusement, Lieutenant Kira Yoshida of Earth. A young Xarxian warrior stepped into the arena, still nearly 9 feet tall but lacking the elaborate scars of her elders. Yoshida walked calmly to face her opponent, looking almost childlike in comparison. The crowd's laughter echoed off the ancient stones. "Begin," Nixis commanded. Zara charged forward with devastating speed, her massive fist aimed directly at Yoshida's head. The human appeared to stumble backwards, causing more laughter from the crowd. But those watching closely noticed something odd. Yoshida's stumble had placed her exactly where she needed to be. As Zara's fist passed through empty air, Yoshida spun inside her guard. Her movements were fluid, almost dance-like, using the Xarxian's own momentum against her. Before anyone could process what was happening, Zara found herself off balance, her superior strength becoming a liability. Yoshida moved like water around her opponent, never meeting force with force, instead redirecting and avoiding until the perfect moment to strike. She targeted pressure points Dr. Stone had identified, using precise strikes that required minimal force but produced maximum effect. The crowd fell silent as Zara, despite her superior strength and size, found herself unable to land a single blow. Frustration made her movements more forceful, more predictable. Yoshida continued her deadly dance, each movement calculated and efficient. Finally, after a particularly powerful but wild swing, Yoshida struck. Her combination of strikes hit 3 critical nerve clusters in rapid succession. Zara's legs buckled, and she fell to one knee, her golden eyes wide with shock. "How?" Zara gasped, trying unsuccessfully to stand. "You barely touched me." Yoshida helped her opponent up, showing respect that surprised the watching crowd. Sometimes the softest touch in the right place is more effective than the strongest blow in the wrong one. In the royal box, Supreme Warlord Nixis leaned forward, her expression unreadable. Next to her, Battle Master Koros gripped her ceremonial blade so hard the metal creaked. "This proves nothing," she snarled. "A fluke. Our next warrior will show them true strength." But as Captain Ramirez stepped into the arena to face his opponent, a massive veteran warrior named Krax, doubt began to creep into the Zarxian leadership. They had expected the humans to fail quickly, to demonstrate their weakness and accept their proper place in the hierarchy of species. Instead, these small, seemingly fragile beings were showing them something entirely new. In their preparation chamber, Dr. Stone monitored biometric data from her teammates while Commander Patel studied the Zarxians' reactions. "They're starting to realize this isn't going to go how they expected," he noted. "Good," Stone replied, marking new observations about Zarxian recovery rates. "The sooner they understand that strength isn't everything, the better chance we have of turning this challenge into a real dialogue." Above the arena, the alien sun began to set, casting long shadows across the ancient stones. The first day of trials was about to end, but it was clear to everyone present that something unprecedented had begun. The Zarxians had issued this challenge expecting to confirm their superiority. Instead, they were about to receive an education in the danger of underestimating humanity's ability to adapt and overcome. The shifting tides. The second day of trials brought a palpable tension to the ancient arena. In the pre-dawn hours, young Zarxian warrior Vena secretly watched surveillance footage of yesterday's matches, her golden eyes narrow with concentration as she attempted to mimic Lieutenant Yoshida's fluid movements. She wasn't alone. Throughout the warrior quarters, others were doing the same, their curiosity overwhelming their traditional disdain. "What are you doing?" The harsh voice of her superior, War Captain Thrace, made Vena spin around. The older warrior's scars gleamed in the dim light as she approached, her expression thunderous. "Studying the enemy, War Captain," Vena replied, standing her ground. "Isn't that what we're taught to do?" Thrace opened her mouth to reprimand her, then paused, watching the replay of Captain Ramirez systematically dismantling one of their strongest warriors without ever matching strength for strength. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "there is something to be learned here." In the human quarters, Dr. Victoria Stone reviewed biometric data from yesterday's matches while the team prepared for the day ahead. "They're adapting faster than expected," she noted, showing Commander Patel a holographic analysis of Zarxian combat patterns. "Their last 2 fighters started incorporating some of our defensive techniques." "Good," Patel replied, helping Captain Ramirez adjust his impact sensors. "The sooner they understand we're not here to humiliate them, the better chance we have of turning this into a real cultural exchange." Lieutenant Yoshida looked up from her stretching routine. "They're warriors to their core. The best way to earn their respect isn't to defeat them, it's to show them new ways to be strong." The day's matches began with Dr. Stone herself facing War Captain Thrace. The crowd had grown since yesterday, now including younger warriors who watched with intense focus rather than dismissive sneers. Thrace towered over Stone, her ceremonial armor gleaming with the marks of 100 victories. "I've studied your techniques," Thrace announced as they squared off. "You won't find me such easy prey." Stone smiled slightly. Good. Then this will be educational for us both. The battle that followed left the audience stunned. Thrace had indeed adapted, incorporating more fluid movements into her traditional power-based style. But Stone had anticipated this, unveiling new techniques that none of them had seen before. She moved like smoke around Thrace's attacks, using the Xarxians' adaptations against her, turning her own newfound flexibility into a weakness. Impossible. Supreme Warlord Nixis growled from her command throne, watching Stone systematically dismantle one of her best warriors. They're changing our own combat forms against us. Battlemaster Koros gripped her war staff so hard it cracked. My warlord, perhaps we should dash. No. Nixis cut her off. We will not show weakness. Send in the elite guards. All of them. The announcement that followed sent murmurs through the crowd. Instead of single combat, the humans would face multiple opponents, a clear violation of traditional trial rules. Commander Patel stepped forward to protest, but Captain Ramirez placed a hand on his shoulder. Let us face them, he said calmly. They need to understand that numbers don't change the fundamental lesson. What followed would be remembered for generations in Xarxian warrior culture. Ramirez and Yoshida stepped into the arena together, facing 6 of the Empire's most decorated warriors. The humans moved in perfect synchronization, turning their opponents' superior numbers against them. Where Xarxian warriors fought as individuals seeking glory, the humans operated as a seamless unit. Young Vena watched from the stands, entranced, as the 2 small humans systematically dismantled the elite squad. They fight as one, she whispered to herself. Like a single warrior with 2 bodies. The impact on Xarxian society was immediate and dramatic. By midday, dozens of young warriors had begun practicing in pairs, attempting to replicate the humans' cooperative techniques. The older generation watched in growing alarm as centuries of tradition began to crack. In her private chambers, Supreme Warlord Nixis reviewed the day's footage with mounting concern. The humans weren't just winning matches, they were changing how her people thought about combat itself. About strength. About what it meant to be a warrior. They're poisoning our culture, Battlemaster Koros insisted. We must stop this before dash. Before what? Nixis interrupted, her golden eyes fixed on a replay of Yoshida and Ramirez's synchronized defense. Before we learn something new? Is that not also a form of strength? As the sun set on the second day of trials, both sides knew they had reached a turning point. The humans had proved they could win individual battles, but the real victory was happening in the minds of the young Xarxian warriors who had begun to question their most fundamental beliefs about combat and honor. In their quarters, Commander Patel gathered his team. Tomorrow will be crucial, he said. They're either going to embrace change or fight it with everything they have. Be ready for both possibilities. Dr. Stone nodded, updating her combat algorithms. Either way, we've already won the most important battle, we've made them think. A time of change. Dawn broke over Cranox's ancient arena, casting long shadows across ground that had witnessed thousands of years of tradition. But today was different. In the early morning hours, Supreme Warlord Nixis stood alone in the combat ring, her golden eyes fixed on the horizon where both of Cranox's suns were rising. My lord, Battlemaster Koros's voice echoed across the empty arena. The traditionalist faction demands action. Half the warrior caste is in revolt. They say these humans mock our ways with their innovations. Nixis turned slowly, her obsidian skin reflecting the dawn light. And the other half? Training in their style, Koros admitted reluctantly. Led by War Captain Thrace and that upstart Vena. They speak of evolution. Of combining our strength with human technique. She spat the last word like a curse. In the human quarters, similar tensions were brewing. Dr. Stone's monitoring systems had detected unusual movement throughout the warrior city. "They're splitting into factions," she reported, showing Commander Patel the data. "We might have catalyzed a cultural revolution. Or a civil war," Ramirez added grimly, watching groups of younger warriors practicing human techniques in the courtyards below. Lieutenant Yoshida looked up from her morning exercises. "Maybe that's not a bad thing. The Zarxians have dominated this sector through strength alone for too long. Change was inevitable, we just accelerated it." The day's matches were scheduled to begin with a demonstration of advanced techniques, a compromise Nixus had reached with the progressive faction. But as the arena filled, the tension between traditional and progressive warriors was palpable. They sat segregated, trading glares across the ancient stone seats. War Captain Thrace and Vena were scheduled to demonstrate new hybrid fighting forms they developed, combining Zarxian power with human fluidity. But as they took their positions in the arena, a roar of outrage erupted from the traditionalist section. "Betrayers!" The cry came from a massive warrior who vaulted into the arena, followed by dozens of others. "You dishonor our ancestors with these weak human tricks." The situation exploded into chaos. Traditional warriors poured into the arena, weapons drawn, while progressive warriors moved to defend Thrace and Vena. Supreme Warlord Nixus rose from her throne, her war staff crackling with energy, but before she could speak, Commander Patel's voice cut through the chaos. "Enough!" The human's voice, amplified by the arena's acoustics, made everyone freeze. He walked calmly into the arena, followed by his team. "You claim to value strength above all else, yet you fear change so much you would attack your own people? You know nothing of our ways, human." Battlemaster Koros snarled, joining the traditionalists. "We know that true strength adapts," Lieutenant Yoshida stepped forward. "The strongest steel is forged by combining different elements. The strongest warriors are those who can learn and grow." Dr. Stone added her voice, "Your ancestors didn't become warriors by following someone else's path. They forged their own way, created their own traditions. Why should their descendants do any less?" The tension in the arena shifted as her words sank in. Young Vena stepped forward, addressing the crowd. "I am Zarxian. I am a warrior. And I say that learning new ways to fight makes us stronger, not weaker." A murmur of agreement rippled through the progressive warriors. Even some of the traditionalists looked uncertain now. Supreme Warlord Nixus raised her war staff, energy crackling around her. "Then prove it," she commanded. "Show us this new strength you claim to have found." What followed was unlike anything seen in the arena's long history. Thrace and Vena demonstrated their hybrid style, combining Zarxian power with human technique. They moved with a grace that seemed impossible for their size, yet every strike still carried the full force of their natural strength. The humans joined them, creating impromptu mixed teams. Traditional power moves flowed seamlessly into redirect techniques. Human agility complemented Zarxian strength. It was no longer about one style dominating another, it was about synergy. Even Battlemaster Koros found herself drawn in, her centuries of experience seeing the potential in this new way of fighting. "Perhaps," she admitted quietly to Nixus, "there is more than one path to honor." As the demonstration continued, the division in the crowd began to blur. Warriors from both factions found themselves discussing techniques, sharing observations. The humans had not just shown them a new way to fight, they had shown them a new way to think about strength itself. Commander Patel watched the impromptu cultural exchange with satisfaction. This was always the real goal, he told his team. Not to beat them, but to help them grow. Dr. Stone nodded, already documenting the new hybrid techniques for future study. Though I don't think anyone expected quite this much growth quite this quickly. In her command throne, Supreme Warlord Nixus made a decision that would reshape Zarxian society forever. Let it be known, her voice boomed across the arena, that from this day forward, the Zarxian Empire recognizes that true strength comes in many forms. We will learn, we will adapt, and we will become stronger than ever before. Legacy of Change. 1 month after the transformative events in the arena, the Great Hall of Cranox buzzed with activity. Where once only Zarxian warriors would have gathered, now humans and Zarxians worked side by side. The ancient chamber had been converted into a joint training facility, its walls are now adorned with both traditional war trophies and holographic training displays. Supreme Warlord Nixis stood on her observation platform, watching Lieutenant Yoshida guide a group of young Zarxian warriors through a complex series of movements. Beside her, Commander Patel reviewed progress reports on their newly formed exchange program. Your people adapt quickly, Patel observed, showing her data on the rapid integration of human techniques into Zarxian combat training. The hybrid styles they're developing are more effective than either approach alone. Nixis nodded, her golden eyes tracking Vena as the young warrior demonstrated a particularly impressive combination of Zarxian power moves and human redirection techniques. We had grown stagnant, she admitted. For 10,000 years, we believed that being the strongest meant we had nothing left to learn. You showed us otherwise. In the training area below, Dr. Stone worked with War Captain Thrace, their unlikely friendship a symbol of the broader changes sweeping through Zarxian society. They had developed a comprehensive training program that would be implemented across the Empire, ensuring that future generations would benefit from both cultures' martial wisdom. The key, Stone explained to a group of fascinated warriors, is understanding that different approaches can complement each other. Your natural strength becomes even more formidable when combined with precision and technique. Battle Master Koros, once the strongest voice of tradition, now led advanced classes in hybrid combat. Her centuries of experience, combined with new techniques, made her an invaluable instructor. Power without control is like a star without containment, she told her students, words that would have been unthinkable from her just months ago. It destroys itself. The changes weren't limited to combat techniques. The cultural exchange had sparked a broader transformation in Zarxian society. Young warriors like Vena had begun questioning other long-held traditions, seeking ways to blend the best of both cultures. We're establishing joint research facilities, Captain Ramirez reported during a meeting with Earth's Joint Defense Council, transmitted live from Cranox. The Zarxians' advanced materials science, combined with our innovative approach to problem-solving, could revolutionize both our societies. Admiral Thompson, watching from Earth, smiled at the progress. When we sent you there, we hoped for acceptance. Instead, you've helped forge an alliance that could reshape this entire sector of space. The impact extended beyond Cranox. Other species in the sector, long dominated by Zarxian strength, watched in amazement as the warrior empire transformed. Where once they had demanded submission, now they offered partnership. The humans had shown them that true strength lay not in domination, but in adaptation and growth. In the Great Hall's primary training ring, Lieutenant Yoshida and Vena demonstrated their latest innovation, a fighting style that seemed to defy physics itself. Yoshida's fluid grace complemented Vena's controlled power perfectly, creating something entirely new. I never thought I'd say this, Vena admitted during a break, but I'm glad you proved us wrong about strength. About everything. Yoshida smiled, helping her friend adjust her stance. The strongest steel is forged by combining different elements. The strongest cultures are built the same way. Supreme Warlord Nixis made it official in a ceremony that combined Zarxian tradition with new elements. Standing before representatives from both worlds, she declared the formation of the Joint Combat Academy of Cranox, a place where warriors from both species could learn from each other. For millennia, we believed that strength alone determined worth, she proclaimed, her voice echoing through the ancient halls. The humans showed us that true strength lies not in domination, but in the wisdom to learn and grow. Today, we forge a new path together. Commander Patel watched the ceremony with satisfaction, his team beside him. They had come to Cranox expecting to fight for humanity's right to exist in this sector of space. Instead, they had helped create something far more valuable, a true partnership between two very different cultures. Mission accomplished? Dr. Stone asked quietly. No, Patel replied, watching young warriors of both species training together in the background. Mission just beginning. The sun set on Cranox, casting the ancient warrior world in golden light. In the Great Hall, humans and Zarxians continued their joint training, their movements a harmony of power and precision. They had proven that strength comes in many forms, and that the greatest victories are won not through force alone, but through the courage to embrace change. As night fell, Lieutenant Yoshida found a quiet moment to record her final thoughts in the mission log. We came here to prove humanity's worth to the Zarxians. In the end, we helped them rediscover their own worth. Sometimes the greatest strength lies not in standing alone, but in learning to stand together.